The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life.
Hello, friends. I'm David Pasqualone, and welcome to this week's remarkable episode of the Remarkable People Podcast, the Dr. Benjamin Ritter Story. Today, Ben is going to take us through his life, talk about his passion for soccer, his desire to go pro, and then how life kind of transformed and morphed, sending him into a tailspin, but ultimately not only bringing him to a place that's serendipitous and full of passion, but now he has a career of helping his clients do it too. And in this next few minutes, we get to spend time with Dr. Ben, and he's going to explain to us not only his life, but how he found this piece and how you can too. So hang tight on this remarkable episode of the podcast. Before we start, though, I want to tell you three things. One, I love you. Two, stick around to the end of the episode where Dr. Ben Ritter gives us a special offer. And three, I want to give a special shout out to our friends in Singapore, America, Australia, Latin American countries, Asian countries, European countries. I am so thankful we have friends in our community all over the world. So thank you for being part of that community. But right now, Singapore's killing it. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone liking and reviewing and sharing our podcast. But for the hard work you're doing in Singapore, thank you so much. Now, also a special thank you to our sponsors. Today's episode is sponsored by two amazing organizations. Number one, Butler's Auto Recycling. Yes, they are based out of Pensacola, Florida, but you can go online to their eBay site, to their website, and pick up parts you need that are quality, warranted, and inexpensive. So go to Butler's Auto Recycling. I'll put the link in the show notes. Do a quick search for the parts you need for your classic restorations or your everyday vehicles, and Butler's will take care of you. Jim is a great friend of mine, brother in Christ, fellow Gideon, and he loves to help people. So let's support him because he supports us. The second sponsor, drum roll please. Who is it? It's Rob Jackson Counseling and Coaching. Rob Jackson is a phenomenal dude, and he is a friend of mine. I've worked with him in the counseling capacity, and God's really used him to help my life, many of our guests' lives, and many of our listeners' lives. So if you need help, like we're going to talk about with Ben, finding purpose, but then sometimes there's obstacles in the way, Rob can help you identify and remove those obstacles in your way. So special thank you to Jim Butler, special thank you to Rob Jackson, and a special thank you to you for being here today. I truly love you. Even though a lot of us have never met, man, I'm so thankful for you. I hope this episode and all our episodes brings value to you. Let us know how we can help you. Reach out through the contact us page of our website, davidpasqualone.com. And at this time, Dr. Benjamin Ritter is going to share his remarkable story. Enjoy. Hey, Ben, how are you today, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. I feel like I just got to turn up the notch on my energy level for a second. So, hey, I'm doing great. How are you, David?
I'm doing great, brother. I'm doing great. So you and I have been talking for a few weeks about coming on the show, and between your hectic schedule and mine, I'm super happy it's finally come to be. And our guests are going to love you and love your story. So at this time, like our listeners know, in the format of the show, you're just going to tell your story. Go back as far as you want, go as deep and as wide as you want. and then share with us what you faced or achieved in life and how you did it so we can too. And then at the end of the episode, we're going to get into where's Ben today and where are you going? So now we can return the favor and help you. Sound good?
It sounds great to me.
Awesome, my friend. Now, well, tell us what made Ben? Where did your life start, and what grew you into the man you are today?
And this is such a interesting way of going about it, by the way, because I always coach leaders to start with where they are. Why? Because people remember what you tell them first. So I'm going against the grain here, and I'm going all the way back to where my journey, at least I feel like it started. And I'd have to say it was probably with my dad going and fixing homes, where he was not the normal employee. He was not the 9-to-5er, and he didn't really enjoy like authority. And he was also just really good working for himself. He preferred it. And so he would take me, we'd go work on every odd and end you could imagine, fixing sinks, toilets, drywall, roofs. And I was this little kid, and so that was my first exposure to what the professional work world was like. Never really thought it was behind a desk. And didn't really realize how important that was, or how important it was that I took that little bit of experience and started my own little dog walking business. Or I always thought work was just kind of something you did, you worked hard at it, you weren't too concerned about the environment or sweating or anything like that, which led to a lot of odd jobs along the way. But combine that with my passion for soccer that developed and my decision to try to become a professional soccer player, I would never really, looking ahead, like I never was meant to be a normal 9-to-5 employee. And my story didn't really take a really big twist until I didn't make it as a professional athlete, because I wasn't I think maybe normal. I think I want to do this. Maybe I want to do this. I was the movie thematic. This person dedicates every single second of their life to this sport. Like I had a theme song when I walked into the gym and onto the field. I thought this was what I was going to do for the rest of my life, despite not being the best. I practiced 3 times a day. I avoided making relationships with people that I didn't think were related to my goal. When you really define dedicating every single second of your being to something, this is what I did. And so when it was gone, I was left without really anything, not really knowing who I was, not really knowing what I cared about, not really having any good friends. Actually, through the whole journey, because I was so focused on outcomes, on how well I performed at a specific sport, I didn't believe in myself. I had no way of actually creating my own sense of self-worth. So I had no confidence. And if you can imagine, a college-age kid with no confidence, he probably didn't have great relationships, a great dating life. And that just drained me completely. I was in a pretty bad place. And I had a choice to stay there or to take all the energy that I invested into wanting to become a professional athlete and invested in myself. And so I spent the next 4 to 5 years studying personal development, professional development, and testing myself, challenging myself, because to me, this was a commitment. There was no right or wrong. There was no failure or success. And I had such a bad run-in with this idea of find your purpose, which is what I thought was soccer, that I kind of disowned this idea of purpose. And I was just an empty slate that was looking to explore the world. And that led me into just a really great place personally. I felt confident. I had great relationships. I had great friends. Now, underlying all that though, because I distanced myself from this idea of purpose so much, I didn't really have my sights set on anything specific. And when you don't have your sights set on something, you don't have insight into yourself, you tend to get lost. And I really, along the way, I did become passionate about certain things. I became interested in them, but those things ended up getting crushed too. So I kind of had this trend of being very interested in something, very, very passionate about something, and them not working out completely. So not having like a sight on something specific, having my dreams kind of crushed regularly, led me to become very reactive to opportunities that came up in my life. And so my career ended up in a place that I didn't really choose, that I didn't really want. And there's some stories there into how I ended up to where I was. But fast forwarding, I ended up as a healthcare executive with 2 graduate degrees after 2.5 years of being unemployed, working odd jobs in bars and hospitality as a brand ambassador, handing out granola bars even on the street. And even the job that I ended up having as a healthcare executive, the CEO initially didn't hire me from the first round of interviews because he found that I was a bartender. And then he ended up hiring me because he realized that he left. They ended up hiring me, realizing it was a mistake. But so I was in this career that I didn't really care about, never really wanting to be a 9-to-5 employee, really having a hard time attaching myself to this idea of meaning behind your work. And I ended up becoming really resentful towards my employer because I never wanted to be there. And I always thought that I should do something more. And so not believing that I was supposed to be there made me not invest in that place. And so I didn't invest in relationships, didn't volunteer for work that I should be doing to help my career and create career capital. And it was this vicious cycle of, I don't want to be here, so I'm doing things that prove I don't want to be here, so that creates more feelings of not wanting to be there. And so I ended up again in this hole of, what am I doing? I have a choice to change this or to keep just wasting my time and my days. And it was strange how I went through this personally and I changed it. And I became someone that I truly enjoyed and believed in. But I didn't take that same learning and apply it professionally. And so at that point, I did the same thing. I said, I'm going to make a commitment to becoming proactive in my career instead of reactive. Despite all the professional disappointments I had in the past, where I had 4 different job offers that were scraped away from me. I was really passionate about something and that never worked out. I'm going to make something happen here. And so that's when I did a hard audit of what I cared about, what challenges I wanted to face, who I wanted to work with, and what impact I really wanted to have on, for myself and for the world. And so I stopped the business that I was doing. I had a side hustle and coaching practice at the time. I said, I'm going to pivot out of this position as a manager of business operations in an acute care hospital, and I'm going to start focusing on the things I care about, which were professional development, talent development, organizational leadership. And so I started volunteering for opportunities with my current employer. I started doing projects, started investing and showing up and investing in relationships. And that was working amazingly until we got acquired for the second time and everyone I was working with got fired. So I was kind of sitting there, and all the projects we were working on, they said, we're going to wait, we're going to centralize these. The people you're working with, they're now not here anymore. So what was my choice? I had the choice to kind of deal with it again and just sit there, or I had a choice to take action. I decided to go back and get my doctorate in organizational leadership. I knew how to start a coaching practice because I had a lot of entrepreneurial ventures along the way. I had that spirit within me. And so I realigned and relaunched a coaching practice, Live for Yourself Consulting, 5 years ago, and scaled it dramatically. It's led to me speaking internationally. I've worked with hundreds of clients through one-on-one relationships from major companies like Amazon and Google and Zumper and DoorDash. And I also work internally now for contract jobs. And, there's a ton of different lessons that I'm happy to share along the way, but that's kind of the short, longish version of my story.
Oh, no, that's great. And if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of go through it chronologically and let's dig in a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. So first, you had a passion for soccer. Where did that stem from? Was that something that you don't know was just innate in you? Or is that something that your dad played soccer, your mom played soccer? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I get that, like, the passion was there. I don't understand why I decided it was more important than myself. That's what I don't understand. My dad was a soccer player. He played professionally when he was younger. And he never told me that I had to play soccer. And so I'm not sure why I chose it, because I played a couple different sports when I was younger, but for some reason, soccer was something that I was drawn to and something that I really enjoyed. It could have been something with my father. It could have been something that I watched, that we watched it on TV, that I was exposed to it pretty regularly. But soccer, it could be for anyone. Soccer is the number one sport for youth. It's just like, it would have been a given that I was going to play soccer as a kid, but I got drawn to it. But the strange thing is, what happened in my life to make me say, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life as a kid in high school? And not only that though, but in high school say, okay, I'm going to practice more than anybody, but my skill can only increase at a certain amount. So to ensure that I can compete with people that have greater skill than me, I'm going to eat perfectly, like tuna out of a can, Like with, that was what I was doing. No processed foods, and I'm going to work out at the gym. And that was crazy to me as I reflect back on it. For a kid to think like that in my shoes, without any coaching or any exposure to this is what you need to do to become an athlete, a professional athlete.
And what was your support system like at that time? Did your parents and family and friends say, yeah, you're going to be a pro athlete, or, hey, it's really rare, but you do your best? Like, what was the backstory there?
And I had no support because I wasn't the captain of the team. I was my dad used to say, do you want to be the tail of the lion or the head of the fox? And I was both. I would end up being the tail of like the best teams, and I would be the head of the second best teams. And I would be someone that would work harder than anybody else because I think I was so driven for it, but I was never always the one that would perform better than everybody else. So no one really ever thought that I was going to go pro. Now, there wasn't, because of that, I think is also why I balanced everything else, where I got, the first year of high school, and this is when I was going pretty young, was where I kind of messed up. And then my parents said, look, you don't play soccer if you don't do good. And from then on, it was 4-0. And from then on, it was just kind of like, okay, I have to do this to keep playing. And even in college, I think part of the reasons why I was probably on the soccer team was because I brought the GPA up. It was just, and I never was someone that cared much about school. I just understood that the rules of the game were perform well here and you get to where you want to go in other places.
Yeah, that's important. That's very important. And then when did you realize, this just isn't the right path? This isn't going to work for me?
I think part of me always knew that. I think part of me always knew that this wasn't something that I really wanted to do. But I was stubborn. And I think often when we get lost in our purpose, when we think something is greater than us, we ignore those feelings and those signs. It happened with my side hustle coaching practice the first time too. I knew it wasn't the right business for me. I knew it wasn't something that I felt aligned for truly. And when it came to soccer, I thought internally, I could feel it now, that I knew I should have done more I should have been focused on more, and that I was sacrificing too much for something, that it was off balance. And, I really started noticing that when I realized that I had a really negative mental perception of myself that led to some physical and emotional issues based on my attachment to performance. And that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't be dedicated to something and be actually draining and killing yourself practically through that enjoyment, through that passion. There's something wrong there. And so I went through a couple different moments of being invested and not being invested. I think there were some major milestones where, one, I got a scholarship to transfer schools, and I was kind of taking care of an injury at the time and just worked through the injury. I said, I'll take care of it after, I get on this team. And so was able to run an under 5:15 mile with this hip issue, played soccer there, but I just couldn't perform the way I needed to. So I ended up getting cut from a team that I was told to fly out for and transfer for and move my whole life for. And so went back, that point when I had to go back to Chicago because it was the best choice, was one area of, okay, I might have to give this up. The second time was I ended up getting surgery because I thought, okay, if I need to take care of myself. So I had surgery the day before my 21st birthday on my hip, and healed from there, built up strength from there, and then was able to get a scholarship to pay the same amount I was paying for school in Chicago in London. And so went to live abroad in London for actually ended up staying there 6 months practically, and trained on about probably 4 to 6 different teams, ended up on a second division team, and had a choice. They said, Ben, do you want to stay here and potentially move up on this team and maybe get to, the next level, or not? Because you have a year or two here to do this. And it was my choice to go finish school, my last semester of school, or to stay there. And I ended up choosing to go finish school and go finish my education. And that was kind of, I think, also the next one of, okay, this is done.
Yeah. Now, that kind of maturity takes discipline as well. Like, you put discipline in your whole life into the soccer career, and now you're making that mental pivot. How did you come to that decision? Like, I know we talked about a lot of the circumstances that led to the decision, but what mental process to make a life-changing decision like that did you use So our listeners who are in the same type of situation right now can work through this process and help them. So was there like a pros and cons list? Was it months of agony? How did you get to that decision-making point?
That's a really tough question, because if you look at a lot of pro athletes or entrepreneurs right now, their story is a lot of failure. Their story is a lot of people telling them they weren't good enough and then persevering and becoming successful because of something. And I like to say that serendipity, like something happening just out of the blue, it seems a little bit lucky, right place, right time to make your career, is a combination of action, consistency, and a little bit of luck. And I think just kind of on my end, when it came to soccer, my levels of confidence impeded the luck from happening. I held myself back. So for me personally, I think I wasn't able to get my head straight. And I remember I was talking to a coach once, and I finally became aware that my confidence was the thing holding me back, not anything else. It was preventing me from getting into a state of flow when I was in games that were at that I needed to compete in. And I literally said, "Hey coach, my mind's holding me back. I don't know what's up." And he goes, "I'm not your fucking therapist." Excuse my language. Sorry if I don't know. Okay.
No, don't worry about it. I'll just slap explicit. We're good to go, man. Go.
Okay, cool. And that, some people are like, "Ooh, that's not a good coach. It's not a good leader." And I said, well, when I look back on it, it pushed me to go take care of it myself. And
I agree 100%. Yeah. Some people, I don't want to cut you off, but if for people listening, there's different personalities outside and there's different personalities inside of us. And if I have the loving, like, "Oh, you're going to be fine, you're going to do great," man, I don't thrive. But if I have somebody say, "You suck, you piece of crap," I'm like, inside. Is that how you were? Where like there's just fire that goes off inside you and you need that slap in the face emotionally?
I think it's a great point, by the way, because leaders don't tend to give feedback in the way that they need to a lot of times, or don't know who they're working with to give feedback to. For me personally, I needed a lot more transparent feedback. I needed a lot, you need to do this, you need to do that. I didn't need negative reinforcement. I did need probably a little bit of positive reinforcement, because up to that point, I was my worst leader. I was in my head screaming at myself that I suck each and every single day. And so at that point in my development, I needed that. I think it just pushed me along my journey more to try to get a hold of my head and figure out, why is it that my inner critic is so strong? What is it about the thing that I'm pursuing with soccer that has made me doubt myself so much? And how is that influencing other aspects of my life, which is what it did. I mean, when it came to building relationships, I felt like I was the joke in the room when I wasn't. I just was doubting myself way too much. And it's interesting how an experience that is outside of everything in my life, it's just a sport, was able to influence how much I believed in who I was.
Yeah. And there's things too that inside of you, I mean, it could have been DNA. It could have been just how God built you. Like your father had a passion for soccer. You had a passion for soccer. It could have been generational, or it could have been you respected your dad. But for our listeners and for you reflecting back on your life, there's things that we love and we can enjoy and we should enjoy. But that doesn't mean it's our profession. It just means it's a hobby. Like for me, I love jujitsu and grappling. Love it. But I'm not going to go in the MMA and follow a career in the UFC. So for our listeners now, try and decide. We have people from over 80 countries. We have people from all cultures and demographics and ages. 50-50 mix almost of men and women from what I can see statistically. But for the people that you're talking to right now, how would you advise them to start deciding, is this a passion and a hobby or a career?
So getting back to your initial question, I think was about 5 or 10 minutes ago, which is, how do you decide when something isn't right? How do you decide when you need to pivot and get out? You have to be very honest with yourself about, are you making the progress that you need to achieve the goal that you want? So it's a hard audit of, what are my skill levels and what is my goal? And do I need to adjust my skill level? Or do I need to adjust my goal? Because I could have done anything else in soccer. I could have changed my mindset in terms of what I was trying to achieve. And also at that time, I never thought about money or salary or lifestyle or vision. And that would have been something that if I sat down and thought about, I would have been like, ooh, soccer probably isn't right, because it wouldn't have led me to the life that I wanted or the impact that I wanted on the world. So I think it's really is taking a hard audit in terms of what is the life that you want? Where are you at? Will your goals help you get there? And at the same time, like any profession, you can make any profession work, and any profession will build a certain level of career capital that you need to get to the next step that you don't even know exists right now. Like, I would not have been able to tell you that I was going to become a leadership development coach working with some of the highest powered executives in the world. I never would have told you that, but because of my dedication to soccer, I developed a certain level of time management, of perseverance, of knowledge in terms of personal development and athletic performance that has helped me dramatically in how I work with clients today and how I operate business. And the first business that I ran, it wasn't right for me, but I learned how to build a coaching practice. So instead of 5 years, I was able to build something in 6 months. And so how do you know if something's right for you? I think it's really is, does it align with your values? Does it align with your vision for yourself? And are you able to consistently invest in this area of your life in a way that's balanced and harmonious with other things that you care about? And is it healthy? I think 100% is it healthy? Because nothing that we decide is important is more important than us, because we've given it that emotion. We've given it this level of investment. I've decided I will care about this thing, despite if I've been genetically dispositioned, what's in my blood, or if my experiences have led it to be part of who I am. I'm still choosing for it to be important. And in my situation, I chose for the thing I cared about to be more important to me than me, and I sacrificed myself for it when I didn't need to. I could have learned the same exact thing without having to go through that.
Yes, and it is a journey. I mean, for anybody listening, it's not an overnight, like Ben's talking about. It took him time. It took experience. Let me ask you another question, kind of jumping ahead a little bit. So you said, you figured out soccer wasn't the path for you. You're in the professional world. You're seeing success, but you found yourself becoming disgruntled, bitter. I don't know what kind of word, but resentful, I think is the word you used earlier, at your employers. So these are people who gave you a career, they were kind to you, and this is common. I've had this, right? So there's a lot of people sitting there now, and I'm going to be blunt, listeners, don't be mad at me. I'm trying to help you, right? Then I'm talking about tough love, but they're sitting there listening now, thinking about how bad their employer is, when really they got a great employer, and it's their own stinking attitude. I've done it, you've done it, they're doing it, right? What advice do you have for them to get out of that mindset and either enjoy where they're at again or move on to their passion?
Every problem is a personal problem. Yeah, I love that phrase. I can't tell you how many clients I work with that come to me furious about their leader, furious about their coworkers, furious about the work that they have to do and the boundaries and the amount of work that they have. When honestly, it's just their perception of the people around them, the stories that they're telling themselves on a daily basis, the fact they can't let go of one or two specific instances, the fact that they prejudge this person based on prior experiences and what they've already decided is the story of this person, how they're defining them, and then the work itself too. They've already predetermined their feelings towards the work even before doing the work based on maybe one or two experiences. And so really, if you're in the situation where you are frustrated with your employer or your organization or a person that you work with, and you're expecting them to be something for you that you don't think they are, you need to remember that one, you've given them that story. And two, you are accountable. You're accountable. And you are empowered, so you have permission to change your work, to show up with a different mindset, to work with certain types of people, to set boundaries in terms of, I don't want to go to this meeting at 8:00 at night, and this is the reason why. Or to push back on expectations for a project and say, hey, look, if you want this done tomorrow, these 3 other things are not going to get done. Are you okay with that? And very often we go into our careers or to a profession thinking that we have to be given meaning, given job satisfaction, given perfect relationships, given all the resources we need to do something, given a professional map or career or journey in front of us, and given a healthy work-life balance, and we're not allowed to push back, to say what we want, to even ask ourselves what we want. How little do we ever do this in our careers? It's mind-boggling. And this would change. I think this would change everything. And there's strategies you can do to become more happy at work. You can craft your job. So you look at the actual work you're doing, you look at the relationships that you have, and you look at the meaning that you perceive behind your work. You can also evaluate your career sweet spot, which is a moving target in your professional career. So that's what challenges you want to face in the future. Who do you want to work with? What is your passion? What is the impact you want to have through your work and in the world? And what are you good at? So that leads to, what are your skills? That leads to greater levels of confidence. And you can do this at any time. You can touch any of those points and you will be happy at work. You'll be more engaged. You'll know what to do next. But we just give our power away. Give it away. And we just react to opportunities that pop up to us through people offering us a job, through applying for a job on a job board, instead of taking control of it and saying, this is my career. I'm going to make it my career.
Yeah. And to those listening, again, a little bit of tough love. I've always experienced and seen, if you run from your problems, they just follow you and get worse. So if you're in a situation and you don't listen to what Ben's saying and resolve it within yourself, and you don't change your mindset, it's just going to keep happening and follow you everywhere you go. It's not the employers, it's us. Would you agree or disagree with that, Ben?
It is us. It's fear, though. It's fear that we're not going to have a job. We're going to get fired, or people are going to think of us a certain way. I have a client right now. We're just starting, we're working through some of these beliefs, but it's, I can't take tomorrow off. What would they think of me? Your organization is going to be fine. Take tomorrow off. But this is a belief that we have. I can't actually push back on this new assignment. I can't let them know that their expectations, their timelines are wrong, because what's the fear? What are they going to think of me? Are they going to let me go? Are they going to fire me? And so people put their employer above themselves based on this fear, based on this, the fact that they define themselves by their work. They define a lot of high achievers like myself. They define themselves by working hard. That's the only way they know how to feel good about themselves, to check things off the to-do list, to be the hardest worker in the room. But the problem with that is when we get into higher level positions, even just as an entrepreneur, but when we get into senior level positions, when we stop being an independent contributor and now we're a brain in the room, you're not being paid for the amount of work you're doing. You're being paid for your leadership qualities, for your ideas, for your innovations, for your strategic thinking. And it's a very hard transition for a lot of people. And as an entrepreneur as well, a lot of times we spend our time working on everything instead of focusing on the one thing that is going to bring us revenue or bring us closer to our goal. And that's the same thing for how do you know if you're doing the right thing, or how do you know if you're investing in the right process? And I'd say, you know what, invest in it, but just do it less, do less time. Figure out the one thing that's going to move the needle a little bit closer towards your goal and do that thing. You can do that 1 hour a week. And I promise you move faster than people that aren't doing anything, or in people that are doing everything. And so when it comes to your employer and your job, I think we have to work smarter, and we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to feel empowered to do that.
So for those listening out there struggling with this, they're in a job and they're like, is it really my employer? Is it me? A little of both. Is there here's the first 2 or 3 steps you need to take to evaluate that, to figure out what the truth is?
Yeah, the first thing you need to do is get clarity on a variety of things. You need to get clarity on why you even were attracted to this industry in the first place. What made you take this job? What were your goals for it? And understand, also what your vision is for your professional career. What do you want to achieve? And is this where you're at going to help you get there? And if there's a no there, then you can start looking around. But to also hopefully understand this, you can ask yourself, what do I truly care about, and how do I define myself personally? What are my core beliefs and my attitudes? And these are your values. And can you show up with these values each and every single day? And usually you can show up with these values independent of your work. This is just how you show up, perception and how you choose to work. And so even if you don't feel this is the perfect fit, how can you leverage where you're at to help you where you want to go? And how can you do it in a way that aligns with who you are? And you're going to be happier, period. The next step in terms of clarity is not just about meaning, but it's also about process. And we talked about your vision a second ago, but now it's about future mapping. What is it that you want to achieve in 5 years? You may not know the answer to this, but you may have some semblance of an idea. What is it that you want to achieve within 3 years? What is it you want to achieve in 2 and 1, etc.? And what is the one thing that you want to achieve? And then you want to break that down into monthly goals. And you want to break that down into weekly goals. And then you pick one thing each and every single day that is going to move the needle a little bit further forward towards your vision. And your vision may just be to explore new things. I'm working with a client right now in the creative space, an amazing creative director, but he's put his dreams on hold because he wasn't sure what dream to pursue. But because of that, he hasn't done any research on anything and hasn't exposed himself to what's going on in the market. So he has no chance to actually create and innovate and no idea what steps to take to move forwards. So curiosity can be your goal. Each and every single day, listen to a new podcast. Each and every single day, write a new, social media post about something that you've learned. Each and every single day, reach out to someone new at an organization that you're interested in to have a conversation. And so when I was building my business, it wasn't, it took me, I started in 2016. I didn't leave healthcare in 2018 in the beginning. And it was figuring out what's the one thing I needed to do each and every single day to move forwards. And for example, I used to do a podcast for my previous company. We would do an episode, it was like twice a week. I did it for 5 years. Didn't do anything for my business. And so when I'm looking at my new business, I asked myself, is a podcast something I really want to integrate? In the beginning, it wasn't. And then I ended up moving that model to support my in-person events. So I interviewed my guests. And those guests became really close relationships because the podcast was a leverage to build a close relationship with them. And so now I use my podcast as a way to actually meet people that I want to meet. And so because of my experiences and because I didn't overly invest in something, I was able to create a higher level of awareness and what outcome this thing could bring to me for my business and for my vision. And I was able to adjust it. But if we just go all in something without actually having a little bit of higher level view on it, why we care about something and where we're going, we may lose our insight again, just like I did when I was younger, when I kind of forgot why I cared about what I was doing.
Thank you for sharing so much and talking through this, because I know it's a lot. There's one more thing I want to discuss that I know our listeners might be struggling with. When you have a dream or a passion, most of the people I know who are just elite achievers, like the 1% of 1%, they're completely obsessed with their passion and vision. I mean, obsession. But if you don't hit that goal, you can train wreck your life, right? So to speak. I mean, you just put everything into it and then boom, now you got to pick up and start all over, and it might be pretty far down the road. Do you have a way when you work with your clients and people to help them identify, is this a dream that you need to be obsessed with to make it a reality versus, hey, you need to back off? Like, where's that balancing point?
A huge part of self-leadership is confidence, and confidence tends to be tied into our need for validation or achievement and success. So with every single client I work on, their definitions of success and the expectations they have for themselves. It's even part of clarity, to be honest. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with that do a values exploration worksheet, and one of their values is success. It's like, what? Your value is success? So your value is something that you need to achieve outside of yourself? How do you define success? Let's talk about this, because this could be an anti-value. And a lot of times people will actually have parts of their being attached to external achievements that they have no control over, which is just a way for you to defeat yourself before you even begin. And so a lot of my time spent working with clients is going over what I learned, that success is not an achievement. Success is the fact that you get to show up each and every single day and live your values, live the things you care about. And so failure isn't really failure, it's progress if it's doing something that you enjoy, which then brings up this idea of, are you living in the present or are you living in the past or the future? And very often high achievers live in the future. And so they miss out on living each and every single day in a way that is enjoyable and fun for them. And so it's about redefining those expectations of accomplishments, things outside of yourself, are just things that you do because you enjoy them. And very often, instead, people label accomplishments and milestones as something they do because they need to, because it's who they are at their core. It's how they define themselves. And so flicking that switch to be instead, I live my life and I work on things because they matter to me. And when I do things that matter to me, I am a happier person, which is very different than I have to achieve this, I have to achieve this, I have to achieve this. And the interesting thing about purpose, and I have a few different points about purpose that I haven't touched on today though. But one of them is that your purpose is supposed to be limitless, infinite. Why? Because it's something that you get energy from and motivation from, and something you derive meaning from. And so if you were to accomplish something and then your purpose would be complete, what then happens to your life? So your purpose can't be something that is completed. It is something that you just pull from inside you. I think people misdefine what a milestone or achievement is in regards to purpose.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. When people make purpose statements and mission statements, a mission, it's like strategic, it's military grade. It's like, here's our mission, boom. It has a unique outcome you're trying to look for and you achieve it, but that's not your overarching purpose. The purpose, like you said, is just, it's infinite. It never ends till we go home to see God. It just keeps going. So that's awesome, Ben. Now, from your birth to where we are in the story right now, is there anything else we missed or anything you want to talk about before we transition into where you are today and where you're going?
I just want to highlight again that I spent a lot of years in my professional career not really understanding what a professional career was. And this is something that I don't think we teach enough. There's no right or wrong thing to do with your time, and there's no scarcity in terms of opportunity. Or people tend to underestimate how an experience that they might not want is going to influence their future experiences. And so if you're just dismissing where you are now because you want to get somewhere else, you're missing out on a really valuable piece of your life that is going to help you later down the line that you don't even know. So just going back to this idea of what do you do when you're in a place that you're not having fun, you're not enjoying, I'd say figure out a way to make it worthwhile. Figure out a way to build a relationship. Figure out a way to work on a project that matters to you. Figure out a way to use your role to network into industries that you care about. Go engage into organizations, etc. And so just don't let life pass you by because you're so focused on getting somewhere else.
Yeah. And for somebody that feels, quote, so we have listeners and viewers, but if you're listening, like majority of our audience, if they're stuck, quote unquote, in an office job and they don't have interaction with a lot of people, what are some ideas for them to get out of that box still? I mean, nobody's stuck. It's just, we feel that way.
So I moved to Austin about 9 months ago, and I wanted to get involved in the CPG and venture capitalist space. So the consumer packaged goods, health and wellness, because by the way, my interest in soccer, which led me to fitness and nutrition, led me to a passion and interest in health and wellness, which led me to almost launch my first company, which was a food brand, which led me to launch a supplement, which led me now to really enjoy new innovative food products. So that ended up being pretty valuable for me. And I came to Austin wanting to get involved in the space because it's pretty big here. And I didn't know anyone. And so what I did is I initially went and it became part of my brand statement when I was networking with people, building relationships here. I'm a leadership coach. I've been coaching for 10 years, and I work with senior executives that don't really feel like they are leaders despite having the job title as a leader. And I'm really passionate about making a difference in the world through innovative, health and wellness products and providing leadership coaching to help entrepreneurs get out of their way. And that led, having that as part of your brand and mission statement when you meet people lets them remember you for something specific and helps them introduce you to individuals. So that's one way to do it, is just network. Another way is I looked for organizations that were operating in the local community, and I reached out to them and joined their email lists and started attending their virtual events and will go to their in-person events, but didn't just listen like most people do. I engaged. I wrote in the chat field. People that were speaking, I connected with on LinkedIn and sent them a message that I really enjoyed their presentation, and if I could connect with them and jump on a call. I reached out to the coordinators as well and said that was a really great event. I would love to get involved if that's possible. I invested, and lo and behold, an opportunity came up for mentors, and I mentor in Chicago for a couple of different entrepreneurial organizations. And so now I'm mentoring for literally the largest CPG, incubator here in Austin, and which then led me to some of the sponsors and partners of that program, which I ended up with phone calls with and ended up meeting. And I also was very specific in the types of people that I networked with. And so now I'm actually engaged with this community here and having normal, regular calls with them. And now I've fully integrated myself into the space just through engaging, showing up, getting out of my comfort zone, and being consistent. Because I can't tell you how many people I did reach out to that never responded to me. And when it comes to networking and building a community in an industry you don't know anyone in, the first thing you need to do is give yourself permission to contact anyone. Because a lot of times people hold themselves back. I'm going to be bothering this person. They don't want to talk to me. And that's just, again, a belief. And we're not looking for people that say no. When you network, you're just looking for the one person that says yes. Because the people that respond to you when you're networking, those are connectors, and those are going to be valuable resources for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice and well said. And if you're listening, don't just hear Ben's words, but like our slogan says, don't just listen, but do, repeat it, so you can have an excellent life. And what Ben's saying is he's going out and he's taking the shots. Wayne Gretzky says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So go out there, take the shots. And Ben didn't just transition from a retiring soccer player to a professional leadership coach, and he's working with, Fortune 500 executives. He had to go after dozens, if not hundreds of people before he got that first big break. So Ben, if you don't mind, without using, you can use names, but without using names or companies, if that's something you can't do, talk about your first big break. Like, you're in this new space, you're getting into leadership development. How did you get that first big break, that first contact?
I wouldn't even call it a big break. I think there were certain instances in my career that new things developed. So for example, I would give a lot of built kind of my business off of in-person events initially. And so I'd host an event, get 60 people in a room. And that was a whole thing, just to host an event, get speakers and get sponsorships and such. And then I would get a client or two from that. And I would, give corporate workshops or lunch and learns for free and maybe get a client from that. And I remember I was doing a free workshop for the City of Chicago Small Business Association. And it went really well, but there was everyone in that room. There was the homeless guy on the street that had a really great idea for creating a truck to sell socks and small goods out of, who I stayed after with for 20 minutes and helping him create like a minimum viable product that he could go on a street corner with a little shelf and kind of sell socks from there to see what street corners were the best for him, to the, senior director that was looking to figure out how to move forward, to create greater momentum on their goals. So I was really putting myself everywhere that I could. And in that room, it was a very diverse population. And so it went really well. And I was leaving, and I was literally downstairs of City Hall, and I get a phone call, and I pick it up, and it's the coordinator of the event. And they say, "Hey, Ben, can you come back up?" They say the chief deputy walked by the room when everyone was leaving and needed to know what was going on, because he's never seen people leave a workshop that excited. And so I went up, and I got brought into a conference room and ended up basically getting asked if I would lead a leadership training for their entire department. And that was one of the first big leadership trainings that I ended up booking serendipitously, right? Action and consistency and a little bit of luck leads to serendipity. And, I laugh because I sell something before I create it. I think everybody should. If you believe in yourself enough, sell it before you create it. And so that workshop led me to create the team model of managing to motivate, which has been for years bringing me income now. and has been one of the foundational leadership strategies that I bring into an organization to train teams on. And that was that, like stories like that tended to happen here and there. Now, personal clients, just there's a certain, when you have a service-based business, you'll reach a certain amount of work where the struggle drastically decreases. You kind of like this L-shaped hockey puck, hockey stick kind of curve where you've coached enough people, you have enough good reviews, your brand is aware enough where now you get referrals, you get people stumbling onto what you're doing. And then what I think has been really great about this past year is organizations now are happy to fit the bill for leadership coaching because they don't have programs internally. So a lot of my clients now, I'd say probably about 30% of them are being paid for by the corporation through their leadership development program and funding. So they're reimbursing, which is something that didn't happen a couple of years ago.
Yeah, thank COVID, right? One of the only benefits from COVID. So
it's waking people, I mean, in the career at least, it is waking some people up and giving them an opportunity to invest a little bit more in themselves. And not, I don't know where people listen to this, but in the US, unemployment benefits were substantially increased during this time. And so people that are out of work, some people may argue that it's gives them less motivation to go back to work. And this is a gift for a lot of people that were unsure about their career because it gives them a little bit of breathing room to actually step back, take a break, and reflect on what they truly want to do.
yeah, and I think a lot of people needed that. They were stuck in this just zombie-like life, getting up, going to work, coming home, taking care of business, like kids and family and soccer, and then they go back to bed and wake up and they were stuck. And I thought it was awesome when everybody was at home and our neighborhood was full of people walking and kids playing and just life was happening again. So there's a lot of benefits and blessings that I think came out of this pandemic. So no matter where you are in the world, there's some places, like I got friends in Canada and different countries, and they're like, it's like lockdown. It's terrible. But in America, we've had, at least in the region I'm in, it's been great. I mean, it's been a very good, positive experience. All right, Ben. Well, you've covered so much, and I don't want to skip anything. So anything we missed, you let us know. But if you're like, no, I think we've covered it all, where is Ben today, and where are you headed next?
Yeah, I think one other thing I want to touch on real quick is when I made the pivot to this other brand that I have now, I had to make a really tough choice to give up something I worked on for 5 years. And that made me have to stop a lot of things that I was doing that were sustaining the wrong brand. And you have to make a conscious choice when you're willing to make a pivot to ensure that your brand is consistent. So if you are changing careers and industries, what do you post about? What do you talk about? What will people find when they search you online? How are you phrasing your previous experiences? And if you have a business, are you willing to give up, delete, clear the the environment online that has stories about you? And in this, a couple things came up for me to kind of challenge my commitment to my new brand. This new business idea that I created when I launched the supplement, where I had to say, I'm going to launch it and let it float. I'm not going to launch it and support it. And I'm going to see what happens. And if it takes off, I'll invest in it. But if not, I'm actually just going to sit back and reinvest in my current brand, because this is going to ruin what I've done. And it took a good year and a half to get people to stop calling me on the street my past brand than to the one I have today. So keep that in mind when you're investing and building something. Okay, now I'm happy to talk about what's going on now.
No, man, you're hitting on such good, solid life advice, man. I appreciate you, Ben, so much. And I know our listeners do as well. And making that pivot is scary. And you said something earlier. You said how it's hard to adjust sometimes. And it is. Like, if you're listening and you're taking the steps Ben's talking about, or maybe you're reaching out to him at the end, he's going to have a special offer and we're going to have contact information in the show notes, and Ben's going to share that. But making a pivot after 30 years, 40 years, 60 years, it's not instant. It's not like you're just flicking the switch. Even the 9 to 5, I love the point you made earlier, Ben, saying the words I'm going to miss, but the point was, you don't have to work 12 hours a day. It's not about the quantity you put in, it's about the quality. When you were talking about the leadership and you were talking about the position. I remember when I switched from helping organizations grow to having my own shingle, right? I was making more money working 2 hours a day and I felt so guilty. I literally felt like I was doing something wrong for about a year. And finally, I'm just like, screw it. I accept this and I'm thankful, right? But how do you explain that to people? How do they, because it took me a year. If I talked to you, I might have been done in 30 days, right? How do you accelerate that process? You reframe your mind, or does it just take time?
I like to walk clients through a process of, there's just a lot of questions and prompts. And one of them is, how long would it take your employer to fire you if you stopped responding to email, your phone, or do any work?
Yeah, not long.
Well, it's probably longer than they think. It's not one day, it's not 2 days. You probably might get a week. You might get 2 weeks. But that's really different than their perception of, I need to work 12 hours a day to keep my job and to feel valuable to this company. And then you can walk them back. Okay, let's say you reply to emails, but you don't actually submit anything. How long do you think you'd keep your job? Okay, what if you miss a couple of deadlines and you make some deadlines? How long do you think you keep your job? And it's walking them through this idea of, okay, you actually are pretty safe. And if you're not safe at work, if you still feel like you're not safe at work, then it's taking clients through a process of finding extra streams of income, as well as highlighting the fact that they're a valuable employee, that they can get another job. And the next job they're going to get is something that they're going to be more excited about and is going to pay them more money. And so that they see it as an opportunity if they actually end up not being able to work where they're currently at. And it's just changing our mindset in terms of, do we need this job or does this job need us? And if this job needs us and we're valuable to this employer, then we can take a step back and we can say, okay, how do I really need to work in a way that serves me more? Because if you're not an hourly employee, you're not paid by the hour. And too often people say, oh, if you're an hourly employee, that just means you work more hours. And so it's a bum rap. And it's not how it's supposed to work. You can make it that way. You can choose to work more and be paid less. But I'd say, how can you be most effective in how, the work's not going anywhere. Like the organization is not going to fail more than likely if you don't submit a certain project or complete an assignment. The organization is eventually going to find somebody else. The organization is not going to go under if you are a week late on something or you push back and ask for an extension on a deadline. And an organization to survive needs all of its employees. And that means it needs their employees to be happy, it needs their employees to do good at their work, to be productive, to be efficient. It doesn't mean that they're all sacrificing themselves. I think it's just a mindset shift from what does it mean to be an employee at an organization. And a lot of times these people think that it's, okay, so the only way to have the work that I want is to go become an entrepreneur. But then you're just an employee to your clients. Any job you can imagine, you could find. I 100% agree with that. Working for somebody or working for yourself. If the only reason why you want to go and start your own business is because you want to escape what you think the story is about working for the organization, you need to examine your beliefs about working for an organization. And you need to actually start screening places that you work at a little bit better. I love being an entrepreneur, 100%. But I don't think it's an escape from the 9 to 5.
I agree 100%. It's not for everybody. I get frustrated and angry when I hear speakers get up there and be like, everybody should work for themselves and everybody should be independent. That's number one, impossible. And number two, that's not realistic. Not everybody's built to lead an organization. So I think these speakers are getting paid to suck people dry, and then they're actually leading them to destruction. So I think what you said is very wise, to examine themselves and their belief system, and really, before they jump into, I want to start my own business and be an entrepreneur, is that where I should be? Because that's an important question.
Yeah, and just to reiterate this idea that you can work any way you want to work, and I'm grateful to my father for this. I'm grateful for soccer for this. When I was in healthcare, we would go into meetings, and I think one example is I didn't wear a suit jacket. I didn't want to wear a tie. I didn't want a suit jacket. And I rolled up my sleeves, I was in a very traditional place, and no one did that. And eventually, about a month in, everyone started taking off their jackets and rolling up their sleeves and loosening their ties. And I remember we'd randomly get meetings scheduled at like 6 p.m. and I'm about to leave the office. I would leave at 4:30, most of the time. And I started saying no. I said, you want to schedule a meeting at 6? You let me know at 3. And if you can't do that, then I can't make the meeting. And some days I can't make it because I have other responsibilities and other things. People, and even though it seems pretty small, a lot of people can't even comprehend doing that, saying I can't make this meeting. These little things, these little boundaries can make the difference between your enjoyment of work or your distaste of work. And it's really important that we take an audit of how we're working and figure out how we want to work, and then have a conversation with our leadership about that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, obviously you have to earn your place to be able to have that kind of luxury. You have a high achievement, and so that pulls more credibility, and then it gets people to listen. So if I guess it's your first month in the job, I wouldn't recommend that. But after you've proven yourself like Ben, totally legitimate and totally reasonable.
Well, if it's your first month at the job, and like, for example, no, I have a coworker for a contract job, and their kids had these championship games, and I had a conversation with her, and she ended up not going to some meetings because of it. And she's like, I had you in my head, and this is how I speak with clients too. And your employer doesn't know what's bothering you. Your employer doesn't know your schedule. Your employer doesn't know how you like to work. And unless you volunteer that information, you're not going to get it. And so it's not, hey, I'm not going to do this. It's, hey, just so you know, I have this and this coming up, and this and this responsibility, these and these responsibilities. And your leaders are not going to say, tough, you have to come. They're going to work with you.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm really proud of my son, actually. He's going on a vacation overseas and going with his friends, and he's starting a new job. Like, he's starting a new job a couple weeks before he goes on vacation, but he just told him, hey, I want the job and I'm here, but I got to take 2 weeks off right away. And they're like, okay. And I'm just like, mind blown, but he just did it right, man.
I've had clients give a 3-month starting date after hire. I've had clients go and had maternity leave right after they were hired. I took a month off of work once to go on a reality show. So you literally can create whatever you want if you feel empowered. And of course, you approach the situation in a way that is politically correct and is, humble and curious and looking for guidance, other than just telling someone that you need this and this or else.
Okay, wait, whoa. What reality show did you go on? You just opened that can.
It was a little show on TLC. It was called Spouse House. It was on one of my bucket lists. It was go on a reality show.
Spouse House. Oh, all right, we'll try to find that and put a link in the show notes. Is it aired already, or is it old?
No need. No, it was a couple years ago.
No need. All right, man. That's funny. All right, Ben. So where's Ben today, and where are you headed, my friend?
Yeah, so I work with leaders that don't feel like they're leaders. They have the title, they just don't actually feel like they're capable. At the same time, they don't feel like they're doing the type of work that they were called to do, so they feel stuck. And they don't have clarity on who they are and where they want to go, so they don't have a brand. And because of that, they don't know who to connect with, what community to build around themselves. And all of that together also leads to a lack of confidence. So kind of I'm working with who I was when I was stuck in healthcare for many, many years. And because of my background in organizational leadership and my research in the fields of value, congruence, and job satisfaction and motivation, I also work with corporations to develop leadership development programs and learning development programs and new manager trainings, etc. So it's something that I also enjoy. For anyone listening, if you think you're going to find the one thing that you truly care about, I'll challenge you and say you're going to find the values of the things that you care about. So for me, professional development, empowering individuals, coaching conversations, facilitating, and then you're going to find a couple different ways to apply that in your life to keep you entertained. Because I'll tell you, despite all the success, I was a little bored for a while. And so I needed to find a way to work globally, to work with individuals again. And that led to some new business offerings and such along the way too.
Now, I know you and I were talking at the beginning. For our listeners who are interested in growth and working with you, you were telling me what a special offer you have for them?
Yeah. So first off, go to my website, liveforyourselfconsulting.com. You'll get a nice little pop-up to download your free guide on creating a career that you love. It's going to walk you through a few of the steps that I mentioned today. And if you want to reach out, you can actually connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll throw in something, a little bonus. I'll send you a link to a workshop that I have on my YouTube channel on finding your career sweet spot. So always knowing what to do next in your career, the formula, and I'll share with you the worksheet that I actually only share with people that usually attend that workshop. So I'll throw that in, but you got to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know that you heard me on the Remarkable People podcast, and I'll give you that little bonus.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ben. Well, anything else that we can do to help you, Ben?
Ooh, anything that you can do to help me. If you know of anyone doing anything remarkable, I think you know a lot of people doing that.
Just a few.
I love connecting with remarkable people. I love hearing people's stories. So feel free to reach out to me and connect. I didn't share this. One of my values is also just really interesting conversations and novel experiences. So if you know of someone remarkable, or you have had a novel experience, I'd love to hear about it, because that's how I get my own ideas, and it's how I improve my own life and live a life for myself.
Awesome, my friend. Yeah, for me personally, if I can help you in any way, let me know. Go through our episodes, go to our website, check out all the episodes. And if you want me to connect you with any of our former guests, or there's a new upcoming section, let me know and we'll hook you up. When I was a kid, I grew up in Milford, Mass, outside of Boston, near the Salem witch trials. And I remember one of our teachers took us to a graveyard, and we were talking about epitaphs, and we all took paper and crayons, and we'd sketch out the epitaph on the grave. And you mentioned this earlier, and it brought it to my mind. And so for myself, for all the listeners out there, we're going to close our eyes. Absent with the body, present with the Lord. And then our legacy will be left on this earth for a little bit. We all need to know what we want our epitaph to say. What's that final thought that we fulfilled? Did we achieve that purpose? What's Ben's epitaph? What do you want your grave to say? And what do you want to fulfill in your life before you go?
Be curious, accountable, and feel empowered to craft the life that you want, where you can live for yourself, aligned to your values, leaving the impact that you want to create on the world and for yourself in your wake each and every single day.
Awesome,
it might be
man.
Too long for a tombstone.
Hey, just make a lot of money and buy a big tombstone.
Yeah.
Buy a tomb. You'll have it on the wall. Oh, that's awesome, Ben. Well, thank you for being here today. You truly are a remarkable guy. I appreciate it. For our listeners, reach out to Ben. If you have any questions, reach out to me. And like our slogan says, like Ben talked about, don't just listen to this information, but do the good. Repeat it every day so that you can have a great life in this world and in the one to come. I'm David Pasqualone. This is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. You have a remarkable day, and we'll see you next week. Ciao.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life.